This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at the Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station, where you can buy things like snacks and drinks along with medical marijuana products. Check them out over at theatlanticfarms.com. That's theatlanticfarms.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 978 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We lead off this week's news in Illinois, where late last week, the state's Department of Financial and Professional Regulation announced that a lottery would be held later this month to give away 75 new marijuana business licenses. In all, just 21 applications were chosen to be involved in the lottery, each of them carrying a perfect score and qualifying as social equity applicants. The new licenses are heavily clustered in Chicago, with 50 of the 75 to be given out located there. As the Chicago Sun-Times story has it, and as we see everywhere there are competitive licensing programs, there's plenty of unhappiness and discontent among those who are not invited into the lottery pool. So this story is worthy of a full dive in to get the full picture. I'm sure we'll be hearing more along those lines in the coming weeks and months, especially once the licenses are actually handed out. Another story that broke late last week was picked up by Kyle Yeager over at Marijuana Moment, who detailed an announcement made on Friday that the U.S. Department of Agriculture was reopening a public comment period on industrial hemp regulation after the agency was flooded with pressure from the industry over a proposed USDA plan for hemp regulation. In a Federal Register notice published on Friday, the USDA said there are 12 specific areas it's seeking public comment on, including interstate commerce, measurements of uncertainty for sampling, and the disposal and remediation of non-compliant hemp plants. You can swing over to Kyle's story for more on this to see the full list of 12 topics the USDA would like to hear more on, and for a link to how you could submit your own thoughts. This is obviously a huge issue for anyone touching hemp in their business life, so not a bad one to immerse yourself in today. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. We jump up to Vermont for our final top story on the day as we look at the ongoing storyline of the state's lawmakers working to pass Senate Bill 54, a measure that would allow for a legal marijuana sales program in a state that has now legalized everything but the sale of cannabis. We've been tracking this one as Vermont lawmakers have met in special session with a bicameral committee working to merge two versions of Senate Bill 54, one out of the House and the other out of the originating Senate. According to Kyle over Marijuana Moment, who also picked this one up, that bicameral committee just met on Friday and appears to be close to hammering out a compromise. Some of the remaining points of contention here include a disagreement over whether local towns should have to opt in or opt out of allowing marijuana businesses within their borders, as well as a dispute over allowing the police to pull over drivers for not wearing seatbelts, because that's germane to the topic somehow. This is another one I'd suggest reading in full if this catches your attention. Kyle's story has lots of good detail and video of the Zoom deliberations held on Friday by Vermont lawmakers. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, the Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station, where you can buy things like snacks and drinks alongside medical marijuana products. If you have not yet already, make sure to swing by the Atlantic Farms for a visit to check out their newly renovated sales space, where you'll find a wide array of top quality Maine medical cannabis products, all available at prices designed to match your budget. There's a reason why so many people drive by other dispensaries on their way to Atlantic Farms. Learn more for yourself over at their website at theatlanticfarms.com. That's theatlanticfarms.com. Big thanks to everyone over at The Atlantic Farms for the support that keeps our news train chugging along. All right, time for the Blitz. Pennsylvania's state Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman recently said that his state would not be passing legal adult use marijuana anytime soon, despite the call by Governor Tom Wolf to pass legalization to help ease the financial fallout from Trump's disastrous pandemic response. As you might have guessed, Pennsylvania State Senate Majority Leader is a Republican, so there's no chance of any kind of effective governance there. Keep that in mind when you vote in November. Republicans suck at governing. Vote them out. The Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission just released a 40-page report looking at allegations that the system used to issue medical marijuana business licenses was possibly corrupted by former state delegate Cheryl D. Glenn, who was convicted on federal charges that she illegally accepted bribes in exchange for political favors. The report thankfully did not find any evidence of wrongdoing in the 2019 licensing process. If you want more on this, Maryland Matters has a good piece up, including a link to the full report itself. Always a good habit to get into clicking through to source material. Deborah Borchard over at Green Market Report reports on the psychedelic research company Numinus raising $4 million in funding, which it says will be used for research into the therapeutic uses of MDMA and psilocybin, in addition to general operating expenses. Hopping up to Canada, we have the Quebec province's SQDC stores reporting a net profit of just under $10 million Canadian for the quarter ending June 20th, or around $7.4 million US. That came on overall sales of $110 million Canadian for the quarter. The province's quarterly profits were up $8.4 million over the same quarter last year, a result of new store openings, though Quebec remains the bottom of the heap when you look at Canadian provinces and their per capita dispensary count. Virginia's state legislature, nicely in the hands of Democratic lawmakers, passed new legislation late last week, easing the penalties associated with the possession of marijuana in a motor vehicle, moving the offense from a primary to a secondary listing, which will reduce the punishment given out and the chances that people busted for it will find their way further into the criminal justice system. Besides, the bill passed, which now has to be worked over by conference committee before being taken up by Governor Ralph Northam, a number of other cannabis reform bills are in the works in Virginia. Looking forward to reporting back on those. A vote has been scheduled this week in the U.S. Congress by the Energy and Commerce Committee to consider a proposed bipartisan bill called the Medical Marijuana Research Act, which would ease a number of complicating factors involved in the academic research of cannabis. The two big bullet points on this are the streamlining the bill would do in the process researchers have to go through in order to get permission to study marijuana, and would also create a way for them to purchase it from private manufacturers. Right now, the only marijuana legally available for research is grown by government-approved cultivators at the University of Mississippi. So there's no way for researchers to actually study products available on the market. The committee will meet to discuss the proposed bill tomorrow. Finally, for the day, Marijuana Business Daily is a good chart showing how the capital markets for legal marijuana have fared on the quarterly basis over the last couple of years, with a big dip seen in the fourth quarter of 2019, likely due to the vape health scare, which then rebounded slightly in the following quarter before being depressed again by Trump's disastrous pandemic response, now responsible for coming up on 200,000 American deaths. One of the bits of relatively good news on this one is the fact that 3 times more cannabis equity deals were signed in August than in July. This is absolutely another story that is worthy of a full read, as it impacts just about every corner of our industry. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again on Thursday morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Before we head out, I just want to give you a quick heads up about this week. As you might have noticed me saying that our next show will be on Thursday, we again will have a disrupted publishing schedule this week as I work out the logistics of trying to work from home with a 4-year-old. So tomorrow we're going to be silent, and then we will be getting a show up on Thursday, but just a little bit later in the day. Apologies for that. Fuck this timeline. Thanks to our sponsor, Atlantic Farms, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.